Hi, I'm Dale Morgan, and this is my podcast, Morganza. My plan is to use this time to talk to friends and family and others about life and music and art and literature and whatever else is on our minds. I don't plan to publish on any kind of regular basis, but that could change once we get the ball rolling. So thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy it. My guest today is my good friend Rachel Rosenman, who's currently working on her doctorate in music theory at Harvard University. Thank you for joining me, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You nervous?
I'm okay.
Oh, okay, good, because I'm nervous. Okay, so never having done this before, so here we go. Rachel, you come from the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area in particular, and that's part of the country that I don't know anything about. I've never been to. But I do want to know, is it true that it rains all the time there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the reputation for rain. It's gray a lot of the time.
Gray, right.
It does rain pretty frequently, but not always super hard. I feel like when I've lived in other parts of the country, like now on the East Coast, sometimes in the summer we get this really kind of sudden torrential rain downpour. And Seattle was less of that. It was more kind of, a steady light rain. There's even a joke that real Seattleites don't wear... or we don't use umbrellas, just, wearing a raincoat is enough, and so the people with umbrellas are the tourists.
Okay, great. Now, Seattle has its own rich musical heritage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, what comes to mind is Jimi Hendrix in the 60s, and then the whole grunge thing in the 80s and 90s. And so how do the locals there feel about these, Jimmy and about the grunge thing and how is music a big part of the atmosphere there?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. I mean, there's a statue of Jimi Hendrix in Seattle in the neighborhood Capitol Hill that I've walked by several times, and the legacy of Nirvana or other kinds of grunge bands, even the Sub Pop record label is really
right.
Well known. We have a museum that was new in my lifetime that was originally called the Experience Music Project Museum. Now it's called Mopop, Museum of Popular Culture, but they've had exhibits on the history of grunge, or they've had rock guitars on display, or kind of
cool
interactive rock music activities you can do. Or even Macklemore, who's famous for the song Thrift Shop, is from Seattle, and there used to be a thing at that museum where you could get yourself dressed up in the kind of stuff that was in the music video for Thrift Shop and have photos taken, things like that. So I think in general we're proud of local talent, local artists, whether from the past or from now too.
Were your parents from the area as well, or how long were they a part of that area? I
mean, they both, they met having come to Seattle for work, but my dad grew up in New England, in Connecticut.
The other side of the country.
Yeah, and then my mom in Ohio, close to Cleveland. So they're not lifelong Pacific Northwesterners, but I think they're happy there now.
Mm-hmm. And so you were born there?
Yeah, I was born in Seattle.
And tell us about your family, brothers, sisters.
Yeah, I have 2 sisters who are fraternal twins and 3 years younger than me.
Uh-huh.
We used to all be involved in music activities, like we played in the high school marching band, things like that.
Yes.
I'm the only one who ended up studying music in college and after. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it was something present in all of our lives. Now, one of my sisters is in law school and the other is finishing up business school. So we're all kind of doing our different things.
Right. So were your parents musicians?
Yeah, I would say my father played clarinet and saxophone and some piano kind of, for fun in high school. And he was in a band in college with some friends. I don't know if any of his friends in the band were music majors. He focused on science, studied biology, and went on in kind of, biology research and worked for a biotech company for some time before he then went on to be a lawyer. But for him, I think music has always been really, important as something to make and to listen to and a way to meet people too through playing together.
Right.
And then my mom took piano lessons for a few years kind of as an adult. She hasn't for some time, but it's definitely going to hear music and encouraging, us as kids to participate in music in ways that were meaningful for us was something that was important for them too.
So when did you start music lessons, and what instrument? Piano?
Yeah, I started with piano first. Right. Definitely in elementary school. I can't remember exactly how young I was. But yeah, piano first, and then I started for us, band started in middle school. So in the sixth grade, I started with clarinet, and then going into high school, we started to have jazz band, which got me back into playing piano again, but more, jazz piano is quite different. Sometimes you have to improvise, or sometimes you're not so much told what to do. It's more kind of, what the chord structure is, and it's your job to come up with an accompaniment for the rest of the jazz band that makes sense in that context, but they don't always tell you to sort of play these exact notes.
Right,
so it felt like kind of, back to the piano, but in a very different way.
Right, definitely. Well, tell us about your studies now. So you're working on a PhD in music theory.
Yeah.
You've got a master's from, where's your math?
Oh, yeah, I did a master's in music theory at Indiana University.
Okay,
so that,
Indiana.
Yeah, it was a very exciting environment to be in. They have a really big school of music. And so my own focus was on this academic side of things, so studying musical structures and systems and analysis within historical context, things like that. But there were also, huge numbers of really excellent performers who were studying there, and of course who were working there as faculty. But so there were all kinds of concerts all the time. There was a series of operas put on every year by student performers, in the opera cast and chorus and in the orchestras too, and also just students doing recitals for their degrees. Like if you're studying performance, you'll often put on a special recital for the end of junior year and the end of senior year just as a requirement, but it's also, a way to share music with the public. And so I heard so much music kind of just casually, walking by and learning, someone's giving a violin recital, and you could drop in and hear some amazing recitals just that way.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what are you working on now?
Yeah, so now I'm working on a dissertation that focuses on French music around the turn of the 20th century. And by music, I essentially qualify more. I'm focusing on, classical music, and specifically on a kind of chamber music for, vocalists, for singers with piano accompaniment, which we would call art songs. So it's songs based on poetry, set to a musical melody, sung by a singer with a piano accompanying them. And I think it's a cool way to get into studying music, but also poetry, and also really kind of language and literature in those contexts, because I think I like reading. I've learned French as a foreign language, and I like, working with it. I've learned German as a foreign language as well. My dissertation is focusing on this French tradition, but yeah, I like being able to work with words and with music too. And so I do some kind of musical analysis, but also some historical analysis for context, and then some kind of broader conceptual thinking about how the words and music can work together, or how composers might be sort of playing at the possible interactions between those different expressive domains and creating a particular experience of words and music together, in sound and in time.
Interesting.
Thank you.
When did you learn French? When did you start French?
With French, I started in high school. We had, French classes in school. I also, because I was a bit of a nerd, I got really, into it. I feel like I would read a lot just online in my spare time about French grammar and how it worked. Or you can look up, in the age of the internet, you can read French newspapers on the internet. And so I feel like in high school, I had great enthusiasm for all that. And then I continued in college too. I did a double major in music and in French, and so I kept up with that through a little bit of language course and then kind of courses in French literature.
Now, your your doctoral studies have taken you to Paris to do some work, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Yeah, no, I was really fortunate to get a fellowship, so I could spend a good chunk of an academic semester in Paris studying abroad. And so I was looking at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which is the French National Library, I guess. In their music department collections, they have a whole lot of manuscripts from the composer Francis Poulenc, as well as some sketchbooks from the composer Erik Satie. And those are both composers who are kind of main characters in my dissertation. So it was really cool just to see, this is their handwriting, this was their book that they touched where they were writing things like that.
Exciting.
But also some other kinds of materials there were just like even early print, sheet music editions, but from the early 20th century, just seeing how the covers are printed with cool decorations or what sort of the old paper looks like. You get to see all those kinds of things. And then, of course, I got to do some, kind of tourist things that are also important for context, like going to look at art in museums from around the time period I'm studying, or even, museums of the history of the city, or just other kinds of things like that. And Paris, too, it's a beautiful city just to kind of walk around or people watch or see how the different cafes are decorated, things like that.
So you're sifting through these archives, basically, right? And are these things that have not been? I mean, when did Poulenc live?
So he lived 1899 to 1963. So that's something tricky with him. His work is not in the public domain yet, and so these things in his archive, you can't just view them online for free, and it's very restrictive about I wasn't allowed to take photos of any of that material, things like that. So it meant taking good notes, but also in the library catalog, that collection wasn't very well cataloged. Like sometimes in a library catalog from wherever you are, you can sort of know, okay, they've got 5 boxes of music notebooks and 2 photo albums and 1 handwritten letter or something like that. But some of the Poulenc archive just had notes about, box of miscellaneous items and nothing more than that. So I felt like I should see some of what there was. And there was some, handwritten drafts of music or sketches of things or photo albums with friends, but even some kind of random things. Like there was sort of a whole album of materials from when he got an honorary degree at Oxford, and I got to see a seating chart and the menu for a fancy dinner that happened, things like that, which, was cool. And I felt like I should take detailed notes because I won't be able to see it, again.
Right.
But
and you're not able to take pictures or
yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was like that. For some materials, photos are allowed. And some materials, too, they've made available in an open access digital format for everyone, which is great. But they can't, for things that are not out of copyright, they can't legally do that. And then just, I guess, they don't have the resources to make everything freely available like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I often wonder what my archives would look like.
Yeah, no, it's something I'm afraid with. I used to keep journals a lot more often. I wonder if one day if anyone will read them. It's kind of weird to think.
It is weird to think about, but so let's not think about it.
Yeah.
So what part of France did he live? He must have lived in Paris.
Yeah, mostly in Paris or in some smaller cities close by in the area.
Right. That's where the action was. And so, tell us about Satie.
Eric Satie, about his archives or just
his
as a person?
Life. So did he live the same time period? What?
He was sort of a generation that would have mentored people like Francis Poulenc, so a little
before.
Older, a little earlier. But I focused a lot in one of my dissertation chapters on a set of his songs from 1914 that I guess were sort of later in his career, but he had, I feel like, a style that in some ways was ahead of its time. Like when people talk about minimalism and sort of unusually repetitive or meditative kinds of music that came out later in the 20th century, I felt like Satie was sort of ahead of that. He's famous for some piano pieces that are kind of short and minimal in their means, kind of a repetitive pattern of chords with a sparse melody above, things like that. But he also he's known for having a sense of humor. Like some of his titles for pieces are things like Flabby Preludes for a Dog, or there's a set of piano pieces called the Desiccated Embryos, I guess. It's Embryons Desséchés in French, but he has some kind of quirk. He also was involved in sort of founding a religion of his own or getting into some occult and mystical movements at different times. Also known for having lived in relative poverty and not making great decisions with money and owing people money a lot. But so he ended up, in addition to being sort of a serious composer, although sometimes a serious composer of humorous things, but he also worked as a pianist in a cabaret, so doing more kind of...
I thought there was some cabaret work involved.
Popular entertainment and, songs for those venues too.
Nice. So do you find that most people who are classical experts or students, do they frown on popular music, or are they open to the whole spectrum of music, or what kind of situation do you find there?
I think most of the people I've met in the musical world are generally open-minded. And even in the scholarly world, like I'm focusing on, so-called classical music, or we sometimes call it art music or Western art music to mean kind of music for concert spaces. But I think, there are people who focus on studying pop music, and sometimes there are concepts from the art music world that you can use to discuss pop music, but sometimes the situation of pop music or its own kinds of musical structures from particular songs or artists can lead you to develop new concepts or new terms as well. So I think also, there's a lot of crossover. It's difficult to define things sometimes, like is jazz, whether it's a popular music or an art music, and there are a lot of borrowings between jazz and classical composers kind of in the 20th century too. But I think, we're all listening to music all the time. And that's something too. Sometimes people have asked me, do I just listen to classical music all the time, every day and only that? And definitely not. I listen to pop music, various kinds of, world musics for fun. Right. And yeah, all that too. So.
All right. So tell us who you like outside of the classical world.
Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of Alicia Keys and her music lately. I feel like her first couple albums I knew when I was younger, and I kind of thought, it was cool that she plays piano and I was playing piano, although she was, doing something quite different, kind of singing, and also influenced by the sort of hip-hop and R&B styles that she was. And then her middle few albums, I feel like, kind of transitioned more into a little bit more mainstream pop, and then I think her last few, like the most recent ones, have been, again, a bit more adventurous in different ways. But she had a new album come out in 2020 during the pandemic in the fall, and shortly before that too, she did an NPR Tiny Desk concert, I think early in 2020, that came out, on YouTube in that summer, which was just really lovely. I think as a performer, she brings a lot of kind of positivity and optimism to what she's doing. But she's someone I've liked a lot. Who else? I also have been listening a lot to Brandi Carlile, who is from Washington State. Right. So like I said, we're proud of musicians from the Pacific Northwest. But I guess I'd call her a singer, songwriter, kind of folk rock artist. Right.
And Cocteau twins?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I told you about them.
Yeah.
That's going, farther back. They're not currently active as a group, but back from, I feel like the 80s or maybe early 90s was when they were most popular, like a little bit before my time. But they have people sometimes call that genre shoegaze.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, which, I don't know, I think of it as just kind of very expansive, atmospheric kinds of sounds. Yeah, lots of electronic layers and drum machines. And what's funny about them is a lot of the lyrics are not actually words in the language.
I know, isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's there's a Billy Joel documentary on it's like Max, I think, or something. And he for a period turned his back on the pop world and started composing, art music, as you would call it. And he talks about the tyranny of the rhyme. Like when you're writing a song, you're kind of tying yourself into a structure, verse, chorus, bridge, and everything's got a rhyme,
Sure,
it's hard. It's hard. It must be hard to say what you're trying to say all the time when you have to work within that structure.
Yeah, right. I guess, not even working within a language can maybe let you say something even more real.
It's liberating, right?
Yeah.
Because you just make up a word if you don't have one that rhymes.
Or I don't know if it was, I think I once read an interview about, the singer Elizabeth Fraser saying that she sometimes borrows, just sounds she hears from foreign languages, or maybe words as well, or even, I don't know, I'm thinking also about like Yoko Ono, who once said in an interview about some of her singing that she was inspired by like a recording of someone screaming but played backwards, and she took lots of inspiration into a kind of screaming vocal technique. So just speaking of singers kind of singing beyond the bounds of language, it's interesting what people can come up with, for sure.
Yeah, good. Yep. So you have a CD collection.
Yeah, no, I do still own
Yeah.
CDs. I listen mostly via streaming these days, but I do own some CDs.
Yeah. I, as you know, am a big CD collector, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to see anybody that's got physical media. You know, I grew up collecting records, and so
Yeah.
transitioned into CD from there, and kind of never looked back, I guess. But you know, I'm getting more into streaming these days. You also have a fondness for novelty songs.
Yeah, I feel like the term of novelty song is a bit, negative, but kind of songs,
Right.
on a theme, songs that are a little funny.
So you get some examples.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I don't know, it's not quite novelty, but there's an album called Plantasia of music by Mort Garson for synthesizers. It's kind of important in the history of synthesizer music because it's one of the earlier albums made, with synthesizers. But the theme of it, or the idea, the concept was that it's sort of music to be played for plants and it might help them grow. And I think the composer, Mort Garson, knew some people who had a plant shop who would give CDs away with plants. And I think there are other stories of a couple small businesses giving the CD away too. But for a while it had just kind of a cult following. Like, there weren't a ton of copies produced, or I guess records perhaps at that point. They have a CD now is what I'm getting to, but there weren't a ton of copies of the album out there. And if, I learned about it in the context of, I think, a course on the history of electronic and experimental music, but I used to just listen to it. Someone would upload it to YouTube. You could kind of casually listen to it, or people might trade copies, but it was all kind of, casual and not official. But in 2019 it was reissued, and so now you can stream it, you can buy CDs, records, whatever. But yeah, it's hard to describe. I feel like synthesizer as a genre, it's kind of hard to...
I was going to ask what it was like.
Yeah, to someone, in this...
Not being a plant, I don't really know what types of things would be stimulating for growth. But.
Well, I think I don't know if it really appeals to plants or if they can really... I don't know. I mean,
you can't really ask them, so...
but people have tried to sort of measure
growth
wavelengths made by plants and then convert that into sounds humans can hear. Yeah. But I think Plantasia, to someone now, it sounds kind of old-fashioned, kind of bleepy synthesizer. Like, I played it once for some students who said that they felt like they were in an old video game listening to it. But there are titles that are kind of funny. Like,
so what was the time period for this? This is the 60s?
I think the 70s, I want to say, yeah. I mean, some of the song titles are like, Ode to an African Violet, or You Don't Have to Walk a Begonia, things like that.
We're recording after 2 days after Thanksgiving, and this being the Thanksgiving season, we just have listened to Arlo Guthrie quite a bit. The Alice's Restaurant Massacree, which is another. Would you call that a novelty? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. It's sort of music being conceptual art.
Like
I guess
blues.
I don't know.
It's talking blues is the term that we've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a powerful example to listen to if you have about 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, what else? Didn't you have another?
I think I might have told you about the song Birdhouse.
Oh yeah,
in Your
Birdhouse
Soul.
in My Soul. In Your Soul.
They Might Be
Which
Giants.
is They Might Be Giants.
Yeah.
I used to hear that song on FM radio back in the day.
Okay.
So I do know that one. But I confess I've never really listened to the lyrics. I know the chorus.
The lyrics don't totally make sense all the time. I mean, there are things, like, I'm your only friend, I'm not your only friend, but I'm a little glowing friend, that sort of make you wonder, what is this about? And then, there's emphasis on a blue canary in the outlet by the light switch watching over you, and you start to wonder, what's that? And kind of with time it becomes clearer, if you think about it, that it's about a little bluebird-shaped nightlight kind of speaking from its perspective. And they're thinking, like, at some point by the end, there's the idea of put a birdhouse in your soul, but, while you're at it, leave the nightlight on inside the birdhouse in your soul is also kind of mentioned.
Interesting.
But there are also some things where it feels like sort of random word association, just putting in words to fit with the rhymes or with the time that there is. So it's kind of, sometimes makes more sense than others. But also, the music changes keys kind of dramatically
Right.
in interesting ways that the first time I listened to it, I just sort of thought, oh, whoa, what is this? And then I actually paid more attention to the words kind of later. But even just the concept of birdhouse in your soul, you sort of think, what is that? Like, is it a really deep metaphor? And then, oh, maybe this is just about nightlights and, bird-shaped things, whatever.
Yeah, I never really thought about it, what a birdhouse in your soul would look like. So I'll have to go back and give it a listen. They're fun to listen to. They might be giants.
I mean, they did a song about I am a paleontologist, which I don't know, maybe I'd call that a novelty song too, just because it's kind of
that's
on
kind of
theme.
Their whole career.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're a funny group. They have the James K. Polk song.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, that's good. Talks about the presidency of James K. Polk, which is fun. They have The Sun is a Mass of Incandescent Gas.
Right. That one's famous.
Yeah. So I like listening to them. They've done kids albums. Kids albums.
Right.
I think they've done book. I think some of their songs have been put into book form.
Oh, that's fun.
For kids, yeah.
But so you told me about a couple novelty songs.
I can't remember what I talked.
You told me about the.
There's the Limeliters.
The generic up-tempo folk song.
Generic up-tempo folk song, which is a fun song.
Yeah.
There's that. I can't remember the what was the name of that Bob Dylan music movie that came out recently. I can't remember the name of it. But
I can't remember the title, which I feel silly about.
Right, same here. But there's this whole thing where he comes along, and folk music is very serious business.
Mm-hmm.
It's very serious. Pete Seeger's running everything, and he just kind of, and so to have he kind of blew the lid off of all that, and then to have like this funny folk song. I don't know. You had the whole thing with the Smothers Brothers. I don't know if you've ever listened to them. They were
not really.
Comedy folk group.
Okay.
Who went on to have a big comedy career. They had their own TV show for a while. They got kicked off the air for being subversive, like anti-war, which is fun. So look into them; they're fun.
Yeah.
I said I gave you something else. Too.
Oh, the Paul Cézanne, that song.
Oh, Cézanne, Paul Cézanne. That is one of the funniest songs. That's got one of the greatest songs, the greatest lines of any song. He's talking about Cézanne and how he grew up, decided he wanted to be a painter, and he was the first. Father of Cubism. He was the first Cubist, and it says, "Now his Hoover's in the Louvre," which I think is really the cleverest line.
Yeah, there's also with that song they sort of, they set it up and then have their refrain of like Paul Cézanne, or however it goes. Then
the father
of Cubism, and I sort of start to think to myself, I kind of associate Picasso with that. And then the next verse is like, some people think it's Picasso or someone else, and so they address that right on, which is good.
Yeah. Yep. That's by Five Chinese Brothers.
The Five Chinese Brothers.
I don't know if they're still going or not, but they put out a number of albums that were really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
I appreciate you getting our podcast kicked off. And you should be aware, that everything you've said today will be in the digital realm forever. So I hope...
Great. Part of the archive, right?
So that there's that to keep you up at night.
Great.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's all for this time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. And I hope we'll see you next time on Morganza.